Hey everyone, it's Rob Ryder. Sunday, April 27, 2014. And you're a bastard. I have proof. Well, not you, but yeah, I believe it's your original sin. Profound thing to think about and talk about on a day when we're going to have the canonization of two new saints. St. John Paul II and St. John the 23rd. So we'll see how that all turns out. But in the meantime, that and some other interesting, profound things having to do with not just the church, but us in general. So I am Rob Ryder, and my email address is courtofrecord@aol.com. COURTOFRECORD. And my phone number is 616-712-6179. If you can and would, please donate. It's that time of month again. You got to pay that rent, and I can't. But God always provides, right? So I don't ever worry about it. I know that good people will see the value in what I'm trying to do, and if you can donate, please do. And you can donate to ashleyrotlewski@gmail.com or mail it to me at Robert Rotlewski, 10955 14 Mile Road, Rockford, Michigan, 49341. I don't really know where to start. There's just so many little things that we need to talk about. But before we get on to proving that we're bastards, or what they would use to prove that we're bastards, look at something else. This is off the Vatican website. And so this is the decree of Ad Gentius on the missionary activity of the church. And so I don't know exactly when this was done, but back in the 60s as part of the, I don't know if it says at the bottom or not. Holy smokes, they got a lot of stuff going on here. No, it doesn't say. Anyways, back in the 60s during Vatican II, this was one of the decrees of Vatican II, and a decree is the same as a court order. In fact, decrees are what you get out of courts of chancery. So it's as good as a court order. We decree this is the way it's going to be, or this the way it is, or whatever, right? We're swearing to it. Well, there was some odd stuff that happened in this, and so this is kind of hard to read, but we're just going to go down to show you that it is here, because some people think you're making stuff up. Chapter 2, Missionary Work Itself, Section 10. Okay, so where is that thing? It's right here. Chapter 2, Mission Work Itself, Section 10. Let's read. The Church, sent by Christ to reveal and to communicate the love of God to all men and nations, is aware that there still remains a gigantic missionary task for her to accomplish. For the gospel message, please pay attention, for the gospel message has not yet, or hardly yet, been heard by 2 million human beings. Parentheses, and that number is increasing daily. Who are formed into large and distinct groups of permanent culture ties by ancient religious traditions and by firm bonds of social necessity. I'm going to finish reading. We're going to go back and have to hit this because obviously, think about that for a second. But continuing, some of these men are followers of one of the great religions, but others remain strangers to the very knowledge of God, while still others expressly deny His existence, and sometimes even attack it. The Church, in order to be able to offer all of them the mystery of salvation, a life brought by God, must implant herself into these groups for the same motive which led Christ to bind Himself in virtue of His incarnation to certain social cultural conditions of those human beings among whom He dwelt. Well, okay, back to what this said. It said that, now this is written in the 60s, and it's a decree out of Vatican, and it's saying only 2 million people have ever heard the gospel. 2 million. There's 6 billion people on the earth. I don't believe I'm one of the 2 million that they're talking about. And it goes on to say some that have heard it aren't believers anyway. So it's not like 2 million Christians. No, it's just 2 million people. hand selected obviously, have ever heard the gospel. That blows me away. You talk about what's the thing you would call that? Where you're keeping back the evidence. Anywho, that's what it reads in a instrument written out of Vatican II. That only 2 million people have ever, for the gospel message has not yet, or hardly yet, been heard by 2 million human beings, who are formed into large and distinct groups by permanent cultural ties, by ancient religious traditions, and by firm bonds of social necessity. Now, what do they mean by ancient? Right? Are we talking Old Testament ancient? Some of these men are followers of one of the great religions, but others remain strangers to the very knowledge of God. Now, how can that be? They heard it, and they're still strangers to it, while still others, although they've heard it, deny his existence and sometimes even attack it. Right? That little part in there from where it talks about how many have heard it to there is talking about those who have heard it and the 3 groups they make up. Those that believe, those that don't see it, those that don't believe it. That's crazy. So I haven't read this whole thing, but I just read that, and because I'm doing this on this particular subject, I said, that's a good time to talk about it. Well, we'll see where that goes, but it's a question I'm going to ask because of the stuff that I've seen here recently. I said, I'm going to have to write a letter to the Chancellor again. And we've tried to take things to the church before. I've done quite a few videos on the church. And they do have their own court system. And what we tried to do before is circumvent the local court system and just go directly to the Pope. Good, bad, indifferent, I don't know, making the wrong argument, all that kind of stuff. Who knows? When you get down to it, I think that the key in any of this stuff is every particular court has a particular jurisdiction, and that particular jurisdiction has a set of rules that it has jurisdiction over. And so for the church, they have jurisdiction over canon law. When it's a federal question, right? The federal government, lowercase federal government, they have jurisdiction, and what they use are the acts of Congress. And look at some of that stuff too. That's in the second half of this video, but yeah, it blew me away. So let's I'm gonna close some of these windows up. Let's go on though. What else do we have? And this stuff just shows up every once in a while. It's wonderful. So this week I get a call from a brother out in California who shared with me a copy of this letter because he's doing some stuff with the Vatican II. And the Apostolic Nunciature, United States of America, they put a reference number on because they don't use names on this, right? Everything. Apparently, when you send something to them, they start a file, and from then on it has a file number, but it doesn't have anybody else's name on it except the fact that this came from the Apostolic Nuncio, Archbishop Petrio Sabini, who is no longer with us. So this is a couple years old, but it doesn't matter. I'd never seen one before, number one, so that's good to look at. They do it in blue. Excellent. This number should be prefixed to the answer, so anytime you're going to respond, I guess you would use that number as a starting point. The Holy See. So this was apparently this is an answer to a question that was sent to the Apostolic Nuncio. The Holy See, not the Vatican City, maintains diplomatic relations with states. Yeah, I was aware of that. Foreign embassies are accredited to the Holy See, not to the Vatican City, and that is Holy See that establishes treaties and concordance with other sovereign entities. When necessary, the Holy See will enter a treaty on behalf of the Vatican City. All right, most of that stuff you can just read right out of Wikipedia. I'll tell you that stuff, but this was good. Thus, over a course of 181 years, so you could figure out when this was written, The United States Supreme Court has repeatedly held that a self-executing treaty is an act of legislature, i.e. an act of Congress. So where we've talked about the Civil Rights Act of 1866 being an act of Congress, because it is an act of Congress, well, as far as Supreme Court's concerned, that's a self-executing treaty. Nothing else needs to be done. It's a treaty. To break that would be breaking a treaty. So they can't tell you, well, that we don't follow acts of Congress and nothing else. For over 181 years, they are considered the treaties, acts of Congress. So, and that was all that's on the letter. See, there's nothing else on there. That's it. I don't know if there's anything on the back or not, but on the front, you get a reference number and you get the guy's signature before he's even said anything. Look at that. Okay. Cancel that. I just make it smaller. So, a couple of things. A couple more. Where did I put that? Hang on just a second. Okay, so back last summer, Pope Francis, he wrote up the apostolic letter issued motu proprio on the jurisdiction of judicial authorities of Vatican City State in criminal matters. And I talked about this in my last video and talked about it at the time, and it seemed like a big deal at the time. It's like, well, how are we going to use this? But, you know, they were going to increase their authority, or not increase, flex their authority over certain criminal matters. And the one that was of interest to me is, for the purposes of Vatican criminal law, the following persons are deemed public officials. Right? And so one of them was those persons who serve as representatives, managers, or directors, as well as persons who ever, de facto, manage or exercise control over the entities directly dependent on the Holy See and listed in the registry of canonical juridical persons kept by the government of the Vatican City State. And when you read that and understand, you know, that persons are really just pieces of paper, right? I mean, it's you're an immortal living spirit, right? You got a person, a natural person, that's your animal. You got an artificial person, that's your all capital letter name. It's the name of an estate. It's your property. So is the animal. It's your property. You know, it's funny when you look at some of these laws of these states, you got things like estray laws, right? Animals looking for their owners. No, man, this fucking owner's in his animal. All right, this is my mobile land that gets me around in a three-dimensional world. How else can a spirit, you know, interact? Apparently that was the idea. So, right, because a canonical juridical person is just a name on a piece of paper. But it's a name on a piece of paper put there by the church. So it makes it canonical. And it's going to have a juridical personality, right? So it could be something now that's going to be under the jurisdiction of the church. And it's going to be registered in the government of the Vatican City State. Well, your body is a church. In fact, here in a little bit, I'll look at my baptismal certificate. It doesn't call the church a church, it calls it a worship center. Right? But your body's a church, and it's the temple of the Holy Spirit. And so in the Roman Catholic religion, right, you can get baptized as an infant, and then you have communion sometime later, and then eventually you get confirmed when you're above the age of reason, which is 7 years old. And that's when the Holy Spirit enters your body, and you just became a church. What, a church with a minister in it now, or a priest in it. So, so if you were baptized and you had all this done, and they were to go and take your certificate and record it in the office of the governor of the Vatican City State as a canonical juridical person, boom, it would change your status. And I'm not going to go through them, but I've gone through them before. You have these documents came out of Vatican II that talk about there being a sui juris legal personality, or an office with a sui juris legal personality for the laity within the Holy See. Because the Holy See is the citizens of the Catholic Church, being the universal church, and they have their own government. And just like there are Israeli Americans, there could be Holy See Americans, apparently. But you could certainly have the citizenship of the Holy See, it would seem. So that was one of the goals, is, well, how are we going to get that citizenship? How are we going to get recognized? Right? Because this is all about paperwork, right? Getting paper recognized, getting somebody to agree to interpret the law the same way you interpret, whatever form of law that happens to be. So first thing is, it's got to be the right law and the right jurisdiction that uses that law, and you have to have the right status to use that law within that jurisdiction. So, but unfortunately, out here in the local, as we see it, there is no jurisdiction. None of these people are elected. They didn't follow the frickin' simple steps of election. It's all just usurpation of office. They're all void. Everything they do is void. They still got the guns. They're still going to do it because they're expecting you're not going to find who to go to that can put an end to it. But the first thing is you got to quit going to them, because they're just mobsters, man. They're the ones that the Pope has said, if you continue as organized crime, you are going to go to hell. And that's all they are, is organized crime. So they got warned. Okay, so this motu proprio was talking about how they were going to increase the criminal prosecution of things that had to do with this stuff, right? So what is this stuff? Well, let's look. Religious corporations in the state. So this comes out of a book that was written after Churches and Other Religious Organizations as Legal Persons, edited by Lars Friedner. And that's all I can really tell you. Look it up on Google, and they give you a book that doesn't give you all the pages, but you can kind of go through and get an idea. And just a few things. So this was based on these different statutes with these different European countries that have been done here recently, and they had a get together back in 2005 or 6, and out of that this book was written. So I think that, like this first one, I believe it is talking about, yeah, the Concordant, which is what a church treaty is between Poland and the Holy See, signed in 1993, and it says the state recognizes the legal personality of all churches, church entities that acquire legal personality by virtue of canon law. So if we can get canon law to give us this canonical juridic person, that's right here, right? If we can get this from the Holy See, then Poland would automatically recognize it. So I don't need to convince Poland or the United States to do anything. I got to get the Holy See to do it. And when they do it, it just automatically be the state recognizes the legal personality of all church entities that acquire legal personality by virtue of canon law. So we got to get our legal personality by virtue of canon law first. And there's a sui juris legal personality waiting for the laity within the Holy See. The church or religious community submits an application to the Minister of the Interior asking him to grant legal personality of a specific institute or entity. The minister issues an ordinance published in the official journal of the Republic of Poland. So instead of us going and putting a birth certificate in the newspaper, there would have been something else we could have done. Maybe we were supposed to put the baptismal certificate in the newspaper. Well, you would think that would be right, but we're going to see that would be probably a mistake, because that's going to show where you're a bastard. But anyways, this is how they handle church property between the churches and the states. If a church wants to create an additional entity, it has not listed as one of the types it was, or it was not mentioned individually. So in other words, you want to have a baby, the solution is generally applicable in respect to youth and charity centers, right? it submits an application to the Minister of the Interior, right? So if a church wants to create an additional entity, well, first of all, like I said, they don't call your church a church. We can start looking at that, right? Here's my baptismal certificate of baptism. And it says on here, right, where was it at? The St. Joseph worship site. Not the St. Joseph Church, the Church of St. Anthony Parish. See, but at the time now, so I'm not really sure. See, they closed down this church that I was at before, but it says the worship site. Why doesn't it call it a church? Because I wasn't baptized at the Church of St. Anthony, although it has taken over the jurisdiction where this church used to be. But it does call it a worship site. So we'll have to look at somebody else's and see what they actually call the place that you're being baptized at. Man, I can hardly read that. According to the rite of the Roman Catholic Church. Okay, so that's how this was done. So, back to this. Okay, it is interesting to note that the vast majority of entities created by ministerial regulations were Catholic institutions whose creation was not foreseen by the canon law. It does not infer any kind of discrimination, nor does it give rise to an assumption to claim other denominations are less active. They founded 8 entities this way, right? So, one thing is, the other denominations are doing the same thing with these states, so you don't necessarily even have to be Roman Catholic, you just need to be Catholic, the universal church. I think we're going to find the same things have been done. And if the church or religious community, if mom and dad had submitted an application to the Minister of the Interior and Administration asking him to grant legal personality to a specific institution, right, he may have put something in the newspaper. But we didn't do that. We gave him our frickin' birth certificate. Or they did it for, hey, we'll take care of that for you, right? That's what they do. A change introduced by the Concord in 1993 that an entity created according to canon law automatically acquires a legal personality in state law seemed to many to be revolutionary. So this is what went in the Concordant. So when you can get the canon law to recognize you as a legal personality, the state will automatically do it. It's in the frickin' treaty. It's a self-executing treaty. The church is merely supposed to inform the state about a newly created unit. No approval is required. So which church is this now? See, that's capital letter church. That's a specific church. It's not talking about lowercase common church, specific church. I think they're talking about the Catholic Church. The government is merely supposed to inform the state, right? The government of the church informs the government of the state. No approval is required. And then only 11 of 15 denominations decided to apply for this form of amendment. So obviously at least 11 went for the same thing the Catholics did, and something they did. So they're all doing the same thing. The same denomination may be constituted by one registered national church or religious community, or by many registered local or religious or regional churches or religious communities. So, right? So church can be a big church or it can be a small church. So, again, I talked about this on the last video, and I don't know that I'm going to go through as much as I did last time, but we'll just see if there's a few more things in here. Okay, these are the advantages of becoming a registered religious corporation. One of them was, and have the right to be heard in representative town planning, right? So you can be heard in your town meeting. Right now you can't. You have a civil disability. And this is it. You don't have a frickin' legal personality, which you're going to get through the church, which is going to tell the state, and the state's going to recognize it. The The status allows for forms of collaboration with the state which do not rise from religious liberty, but which are compatible with it and which become constitutional requirement by principles of equality. They don't have a choice. Yeah, something about income tax here. And the benefits of a voluntary consignment by individual taxpayers of 0.5% of income tax. The idea is that neutral states should not interfere with competition between confessions by contributing to the establishment in country of new confessions, by contributing to the establishment of a country of new confessions by means of allowing cooperation with it. This is the fourth situation. So when I talk about a public confession, I think they mean a confession of faith. Not a confession I want to, like the Pope did here in public. That's not a public confession. A public confession is a public confession of faith. Hey, I'm a Christian. All right? Put it in the newspaper. Make it public record. That's a public confession. That's what we haven't done. That's what we're talking about, putting this thing in the newspaper as part of the process of recognizing the church property. Legal persons in the Catholic Church. The 2004 Concordant recognizes the same words as the 1940 Concordant, the legal personality of the Catholic Church. The recognition here must be related to legal personality under international law, which is preconditioned on the concordance. Which means the Catholic Church is a nation, just like any other nation. And if you're a citizen of that nation, well, you have their protection. And just like Putin just said here recently, if they go against Russian speaking citizens, right, or basically Russians that are living in the Ukraine, that he's going to go protect them. Go get them, Vladimir. Maybe the Christian prince. According to them, the conference representative, okay, so this is in Portugal. Recognition of the civil legal personality for entities that are juridical persons under canon law depends on notification of the competent state authority. So, to get the recognition of a civil legal personality for the entities that are juridical persons under canon law, and those are the ones that need to be registered in the Secretariat at the Vatican, depends on notification of the competent state authority. Okay, so in Portugal, they still need to contact them. Within the register is located National Register of Religious Corporations. The concordant does not determine the competent state authority, but it implies the existence in the state of a register of canonical juridic persons. Okay, so there's going to be a register in the state, just like there was a register at the Vatican for canonical juridical persons. There is no register with such name, but part of the database of the National Register of Corporations is entitled Catholic Religious Corporations, distinguishing those with legal nature of religious corporations. The state recognizes the legal personality of diocese, parish, and other ecclesiastic jurisdictions as soon as the act constitutive of its canonical juridical personality is notified to the competent state organ. As soon as somebody tells them it exists, the state will recognize it. So we don't need to go to we can't go to the state to get them to do anything. We're civilly dead. The civil legal personality of the other canonical juridical persons is recognized through the registration in the register owned by the state by means of an authentic document drawn up by competent ecclesiastic authority. Well, how hard is that to understand? Yeah, you're going to have a certificate of whatever. Certificate of baptism. So that's, that's how, in this world that we live in today, they're going to handle getting us out of the system. Because it's morphed many times, I'm sure, since the time of Christ to now, we're just at a particular moment in time where this is the way you would get out. But if you can get the church to recognize you and they put you in their book in the Vatican, then boom, the rest of the world knows about it and they have to leave you alone. Or it would appear. So, let's see here. Okay, so why are you a bastard? Or at least I'm a bastard. Let's find out. Here's my certificate of baptism. And it's got me, Robert Allen Rytlewski, my dad, Delbert Rytlewski, and my mom in her maiden name, Elsie Dorsey. Isn't that interesting? I had asked that before. I wonder why my mom's name isn't her maiden name. Why would that be? You probably guessed it. Yeah. So, let's see what that could mean. But this isn't the baptismal registration or registration of baptism, whatever the right word is, but this is a certificate that the information should have come off of. So, someplace they got my mom and dad's name, right? So it must have been on the registration. All right, go look, see what says what. Canon 877 of now this is the Code of Canon Law of 1983, Roman Rite, Code of Canon Law 1983, not hard to find online. Canon 877 says in subsection 2, in the case of a child of an unmarried mother, the mother's name is to be entered if her maternity is publicly known, or if either in writing or before two witnesses she freely asks that this be done. Is my mom's name on there? Let's look again. There she is. The child of, see, it says child of Delbert and Elsie. Oh. Okay, so it's got my mom's name. Either in writing or before two witnesses. So let's see. Do we have witnesses on here? Ah, look at that. We got sponsors. Two witnesses. Okay, we got all the people we need for this to be a valid baptism. Plenty of people. Similarly, the name of the father is to be entered if his paternity is established either by some public document or by his own declaration in the presence of a parish priest and two witnesses. Does it have my dad's name? Sure does. Two witnesses, got a parish priest, got all the players. In all other cases, so in all other cases other than a child of an unmarried mother, all other cases, the name of the baptized person is to be registered without, and I say again, without any indication of the name of the father or of the parents. One made you a bastard, the other one makes you an orphan. One makes you the fatherless, the other one makes you a bastard. Well, what does the Bible have to say about this? Deuteronomy 23.2. A bastard shall not enter into the congregation of the Lord. Even to his 10th generation shall he not enter into the congregation of the Lord. No bastards allowed. In the case of a child of an unmarried mother. Now this is Canon Law of 1983. Shoot, man, I had an older one too. Where's that one at? Okay, in 1917, which was the canon law before the present one, it said in Canon 777, 777. That has to mean something to people who are in the numbers. In the baptism of illegitimate children, the name of the mother is to be entered if her motherhood is publicly known, or if she, or of her own accord, ask in writing before two witnesses that such entry be made. Also, the name of the father is to be entered, provided he himself demands it of his own accord in writing or before two witnesses. or if he is known to be the father for some public or authentic document, maybe like a birth certificate. In other cases, again, so this is for illegitimate. Now, in other cases, other than illegitimate children, the baptism is recorded as a child of an unknown father or of unknown parents. So they've been at it for quite some time. Didn't just start happening in 1983. It was 1917, and I don't know when this was before, how long they've had this rule, but for at least 100 years, just about. Very interesting. Very, very interesting. So Deuteronomy, again, 23:2, a bastard shall not enter into the congregation of the Lord, even to his 10th generation. Well, if you live in a country that has Judeo-Christian beliefs, that could really damn you. Right? You're forbidden marriage, illegitimate by birth. These are just different versions of Bibles and what it says about Deuteronomy 23-2. Illegitimate birth, a bastard, illegitimate birth. Furthermore, no one born due to an illicit sexual relationship may participate in the assembly of the Lord. Can't do it there either. A person of illegitimate birth may not enter. Nope. God's word. A man born from an illicit union may not join. They're just not going to let you join. It don't matter what Bible you go to, they're not going to let you join the congregation of the Lord if you're a frickin' bastard. Or an illegitimate child. Or a mamzer. Are you a mamzer? Well, apparently, if you got something that looks like the thing I'm floating around here with. All right, I'm a mamzer. Now, this just says child of. Doesn't say they're the parents, but it says child of. Yeah, that may mean something here in a minute. I'll show something else in a second. But okay, so right, so a bastard doth not enter into the assembly of Jehovah, even to the 10th generation. We ought to value the privilege of God's people both for ourselves and for our children, above all other advantages. No personal blemish, no crimes of our forefathers, no differences of nation shuts us out of the Christian dispensation. But an unsound heart will deprive us of blessings, and a bad example or an unsuitable marriage may shut our children from them. That sounds like Protestant legalism to me. They're going to add something that wasn't there before and say, hey, gotcha. You're a bastard. You're going to be ours. A bastard, one born of a harlot. The Talmud and rabbins represent the word as denoting one begotten in adultery or incest. You know, you're of no value. Adulterers might see, he observes, that they affect their whole family with irreparable stain should they commit such an infamous action. That's Gill's exposition on the entire Bible. Rather, might not be admitted into the assembly of elders or bear any public office. They're going to keep those for themselves. And somebody here, Jephthah, may be objected to this because, you know, he was illegitimate, but it was his father's concubine. It's different. I guess concubine's different than adultery. That must be Talmudic law. Yet, according to the Jewish writers, there were ways and means by which their posterity became legitimate. So, they say, bastards may be purified or legitimated. How? If one marries a servant maid, this child is a servant, who, if he becomes free, his son is a free man. I'm just going to change the damn record. But what about if you're fatherless, right? A father of the fatherless and judge for widows is God in his holy habitation. It's okay to be fatherless. That's why the correct way for this thing to look would have been no parents on the front. All other cases, leave it blank. parish priest, 2 witnesses. In all other cases, the name of the baptized person is to be registered without any indication of the name of the father or of the parents. Right? It would have been fatherless. Then even under Jewish law, they would have had to, they couldn't treat you the way they do. But right now you're just an illegitimate bastard. You have no inheritance. So, knowing all that, I decided I'm going to have to, well, what do I do with it? So I'm writing a letter to the chancellor. And that's kind of where I am. I don't know that I'm done yet because these things always tend to change. But I share what I have so far. So chancellor, right now the chancellor, the reason I'm sending it to the chancellor and not the bishop and not the vicar and not all these other offices is the chancellor is the chief executive officer of the diocese, the CEO. That's their job. Right? They're there to execute things. They're at the top of the executive branch and they're like the governor. Right? Everything, because I'm not asking anybody to judge the law. I'm trying to get something executed. I go to the office that executes things. I want you to execute some laws for me. Get me some answers. So that's why I'm sending it to the chancellor. I need to inform you of a situation that will require your execution of canon law and possibly the involvement of a competent ecclesiastic tribunal. Certain record-keeping policies of the Catholic Church and its lack of full disclosure of vital information has aided in the enslavement of mankind by the enforced disappearance of persons, by usurpers of civil office, using color of law in a simulated legal process. This activity is a crime against humanity and subject to prosecution under the Roman statute in the International Criminal Court, Vatican City law, civil rights laws of any nation, and of course, canon law. And the reason, we'll see why in canon law. So because I'm going to be writing this to the church, I'm going to use canon law as what I'm going to be pointing out. I'm not going to point out the Civil Rights Act of 1866 or even Vatican City law. Like, the church got their own law. They got canon law. And so the idea is if I send this to them and they don't agree with me, well, then I'm going to ask for a freaking hearing because that's one of my rights. I don't need to take a clerk's administrative answer over the phone, right? I said, no, I need to have a judicial determination on your decision. First, for the lack of full disclosure, from Vatican II Decree on Missionary Work of the Church, Ad Gentis, Chapter 2, Mission. And we read this already, but it's worth reading again. The Church sent by Christ to reveal and to communicate the love of God to all men and nations is aware that there still remains a gigantic missionary task for her to accomplish. Yeah, you're a little bit behind, man. For the gospel message has not yet, nor hardly yet, been heard by 2 million human beings. Now, I can think of a whole bunch of people that if they were to hear it, they would go tell somebody else. So let's get it out there, man. It's the internet. Who are formed into large and distinct groups by permanent cultural ties, by ancient religious traditions, and by firm bonds of social necessity. Okay? For whatever reason, them people got to hear it. Some of these men are followers of one of the great religions, but others remain strangers to the very knowledge of God, while still others expressly deny His existence and sometimes even attack it. The Church, in order to be able to offer all mystery, blah, 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 blah. Okay. Chancellor, what in the heck has the other 6 billion human beings, what in the heck has the other 6 million human beings been hearing? Should be in here, been hearing. If not the gospel message. Only 2 million human beings have heard it? Ever? Of those, some still denied the message? By what authority is the gospel being kept so secret? Get behind me, Satan, and let's see the book. I'm not looking for Freemasonry-inspired spin. What I demand is the entire gospel and consider its continued concealment as a crime against humanity and the work of enemies of God. Second, I think it's supposed to be, it is. I said I'm still working on it. It is obvious from various decrees since Vatican II of an office within the Holy See for the laity, having a sui juris legal personality, has been established, as well as citizenship for all members of the Universal Church, both laity and holy orders. With the proper execution of simple sacramental records, not only would this citizenship within the Holy See be established, but the civil authority within the world would also be noticed to update their records in accordance with already established concordance and other binding agreements, the thing we were looking at earlier. Unfortunately, this leads us to one of the places the devil hides in the church, in the details. These simple forms become instruments of enslavement, witness to an illegitimate birth lacking in substance to confer the blessings of Christianity. And of course, that canon that in case of a child of an unmarried mother, the mother's name is to be entered on her maternity is publicly known, or if either in writing or before two witnesses, she freely asks that it be done. Similarly, the name of the father is to be entered, and its paternity is established either by some public document or by his own declaration in the presence of the parish priest and two witnesses. In all other cases, except for unmarried mothers, the name of the baptized person is to be registered without any indication of the name of the father or of the parents. Talk about lack of full disclosure. Chance or lack of full disclosure by the Catholic Church that a child will be seen as a bastard if his mother and father's name is registered as part of the baptism allow these that wish to use the Old Testament and Protestant legalism to invoke Deuteronomy 23-2. A bastard shall not enter into the congregation of the Lord. Even to his 10th generation shall he not enter into the congregation of the Lord. Congregation, that's Presbyterian, ain't it? Congregationalist? I don't know. All I know is, right? If you're seen as a bastard in the Old Testament, it was a bad day. And we have Judeo-Christian beliefs in this country. Personally, I don't. That just means you're double-minded if you have Judeo-Christian beliefs. Either you believe that Jesus Christ is the Son of God, or you're the Antichrist. That's what the Apostle John said. He made it pretty damn clear who the Antichrist is. Those who don't believe Jesus Christ is the Son of God. It'd be in the first letter of John. Right? So that's the Jews. The false prophet, well, it could easily be Islam. In fact, it was for a long time. And now it's the frickin' Mormons. The Mormons believe that they're the Jews. And everybody else is Gentile, except for the Jews and their family from a different line. But they're the Jews and everybody else is Gentiles. And they got a prophet. There's your false prophet. I'm trying to blame the church. Church record keeping has just contributed to the violation of Roman Statute, Article 7, crimes against humanity such as enslavement, persecution, and forced disappearance of person, and the list goes on. You have allowed the enemy of the Lord, the Antichrist, to persecute the children of God. Is this error the basis to claim original sin because we were born bastards? Right? Is that where your original sin came from? Because you're born a bastard? You got the paper to prove it. As one in possession of his baptismal certificate, I can attest that my mother and her maiden name and father are both listed on the certificate, which can only mean that they are listed on the baptismal register. Had the church followed its own canon law of that section, in all other cases, the name of the baptized person is to register without indication of the name of the father or the parents. Psalm 68:5 would have prevailed. The father unknown of the fatherless and judge for widows is God in his holy habitation. Yet the Catholic Church stood silent. If the fact that a godless civil society took jurisdiction over marriage has led to us children as being seen as bastards or illegitimate by church law, then where is the teaching on this? Is this why you ask for a birth certificate as part of the infant baptism? For evidence of illegitimacy? That is one of the things, if you want to have a infant baptism, they're going to ask you for is the child's birth certificate. And, on there it's going to have your mother and father's name. I'll show you one in just a second here. Chancellor, the same rule can be found in the 1917 version of canon law. So how long has it been the church policy to consider all its members bastards? Will you share this with the weekly church bulletin, inform the apostolic signature, or continue as a misprision of crime against humanity? Because it isn't a crime until you point it out. Once you pointed it out, it's misprison not to do something about it. Misprison of treason, misprison of felony. I'm going to say there's a misprison of crime against humanity. I've just made you aware of one, and if you don't do something about it, well, then you're guilty of misprison. So far we have not revealing the entire gospel and enslavement of mankind, but that was not enough, as even the simplest task seems impossible at times, such as a notation for First Communion as part of the baptism certificate. And this is in Canon 842, where it says, "The sacraments of baptism, confirmation, and blessed Eucharist so complement one another that all three are required for full Christian initiation." Right? So as a Catholic, you're not considered a full Christian until you've had baptism, communion, and confirmation. Gotta have had those. And they didn't mention in their reconciliation, confession. See, they don't call it confession, they call it reconciliation. That's why when it says a public confession, they're talking about a reconciliation and confessing your sins. Probably your public confession of faith. With my own certificate as an example, I can attest the lack of notation of communion on the certificate. It lists the baptism and confirmation, but the bookends of a full Christian initiation, but not the one in the middle, no Holy Communion. Therefore, by canon law, I am not a full Christian initiate and not a member of the church, just its subject. However, as I do share in the office of Christ, I claim the right to defend my citizenship within the Holy See before the competent ecclesiastic forum. And as for these reasons, here are some other canons, right? You got to find the ones that you can use for yourself. And you can use Canon 204. It says, Christ's faithful are those who, since they are incorporated into Christ through baptism, right, so it only required baptism, are constituted the people of God. For this reason they participate in their own way in the priestly, prophetic, and kingly office of Christ. Yes, you can hold the office of Christ. It's an office. They are called, each according to his or her particular condition, to exercise the mission which God entrusted to the church to fulfill in the world. The church, established and ordered in this world as a society, subsides in the Catholic Church, governed by the successor of Peter, and the bishops in communion with them. All right, so the church has got its own society. Well, that's a nation. And it has its own citizenship. It's Catholics. Catholic is anybody who can agree with the Apostles' Creed. Roman Catholics, they kneel. But you don't need to be a Roman Catholic. You just need to be a universal. Canon 205, those baptized are in full communion with the Catholic Church here on earth, who are joined with Christ in his visible body through the bonds of profession of faith, confession of faith, the sacraments, and ecclesiastic governance. Well, there's the government. All right, and that's supposed to be in full communion. Where's my certificate of citizenship? I'm supposed to be in the visible body of Christ. Well, that's the church. 222 or 221, Christ's faithful may lawfully vindicate and defend their rights they enjoy in the church before a competent ecclesiastic forum in accordance with the law. That's what I'm going to do. You ain't going to take care of it? I want a frickin' hearing. 219, all Christ's faithful have the right to immunity from any kind of coercion in choosing a state of life. And I leave in the state of Michigan because it don't exist. Canon 220. No one may unlawfully harm the good reputation, that would be slander, which a person enjoys, or violate the right of every person to protect his or her privacy. These clerical errors and omissions have harmed my good name and God-given character, and you will set the record straight by means available to you. That's as far as I got. So I'm going to write a letter to the Chancellor making an issue of the fact that we've never been given the entire gospel. The fact that Canon 877 says If your mom and dad's name are in the frickin' certificate that you are a bastard, and that the Jews don't like bastards, so in a Judeo-Christian society, they could use that against you, right? But it could just as easily have been because, and this is the thing, just says child of Delbert and Elsie Dorsey. Yeah, which one am I reading here? Right? Doesn't say parents. It didn't call my dad the father. Just said child of. Without any indication of the name of the father or the parents, it would have made you fatherless, right? And Psalm 68:5, now them Jews have to treat you different. A father of the fatherless and a judge for the widows is God in his holy habitation. So then, because they didn't do a notation on the back, right here, First Communion, it doesn't have a date on it like Confirmation does. Confirmation was at like age 9, and First Communion was at like age 7. It's not on there. Oh. No. What else do we have? What else we got? That's that Roman statute that goes to the International Criminal Court in The Hague. And the reason for this court is supposed to be that if there's a human rights violation and your country won't, either won't or can't prosecute it, then this court's supposed to. I don't know if they will or not. I just point out that's what they're there for. And that, they have their own system, and they got a thing for crimes against humanity, and they have murder, extermination, enslavement, imprisonment, or other severe deprivation of physical liberty and violation of fundamental rules of international law. So you're in prison right now. You're a political prisoner, or you're a state prisoner because you haven't gone down per this Civil Rights Act of 1866 and the act that's incorporated by reference that actually has the remedy in there that says you're supposed to go before the district judge and ask for a discharge. Because somebody has said, hey, you're a political prisoner, and they put you on a list, but the grand jury has never handed down an indictment. It's never been prosecuted, but the charge still remains. And we need to go there and say, lack of prosecution. Basically, but we're not supposed to do anything except go before the judge and ask to be discharged. It's an act of Congress, and as we saw earlier, as far as the Vatican's concerned, an act of Congress is the same as a treaty. It's a self-executing treaty. So it means the one side's already agreed to it, and we just need to accept the treaty. Imprisonment, persecution, right? So this is persecution against bastards. I'm an identifiable group. I'm in an identifiable group. I'm a bastard. I got a freaking public record that shows it, according to them. Enforced disappearance of person, right? My canonical juridic person has never been established within the Catholic Church, registered in the Secretariat to then be transferred to the state government to show that I have a civil personality. Right? That's the thing. If you're illegitimate, you don't have a civil personality. You can't be a citizen of the society. So, what else we got? Certified copy. Oh, certified. Let me see. All right. So they ask you if you go to get baptized, they want you to bring your baptism or your birth certificate. I believe this is what they're talking about. Certificate of live birth. Because on here, well, it's not quite the same. See, on the baptismal certificate, they don't use middle names. I did notice that. This is Delbert Chester Rutluski. And mother is Elsie Mae Dorsey. They use middle names here, but not on the other one. Not on the baptismal certificate. However, where it said authenticated public document, here you go. And on here, they're using different names again. So your baptismal certificate is almost like a second witness to being illegitimate if they put your mom and dad's name on it. Got to get that error pointed out to them, right? So they can correct it. Say, oh, we can correct that, right? The Pope can issue an order from his chair. Correct the record. Boom. Everybody's taken out of the slave society. All that's left in there are the slave masters. They can have it. Oh, so, that was it on that part. And I don't know if I can do this right now or not. What did I want to show you? Well, we're going to continue on. We're going to switch gears and go to the federal. Because this is interesting too. The fact that Ohio isn't a state to start with. And who's who in the zoo. But, let's start with the Northwest Ordinance. No, I can't. This is going to take too long to do. Shoot. What I wanted to, I guess what I'm going to just point out is in the Northwest Ordinance, it talks about, previous to the organization of a General Assembly, the governor shall appoint such magistrate and other civil officers in each county or township as he shall find necessary for the preservation of peace and good order in the same. So, before they became states, they gave the power to the township or the county. And the difference was, in the north they used townships, in the south they used counties. Where is that part of? Oh, that's what I want to show you. So what they were supposed to do, there shall be formed in the said territory not less than 3 nor more than 5 states. Right? They shall become fixed and established as follows. Shall. Western state, middle state, eastern state. It wasn't supposed to be a state of Ohio. It was supposed to be a western, a middle, and an eastern. Apparently. Shall be bounded by the last mentioned direct line, the Ohio, Pennsylvania, and other. And I'm not sure that what they ended up making the Ohio out of is going to necessarily match up with what these particular territories were they came up with. But one of the things is Ohio never had an act of Congress to establish it. There were 3 other states that came before. Oh, here's another thing. At the time, there was a party called the Democratic Republican Party. What do we have now? Democrats and Republicans. Go figure. They used to be one party. Still one party. Right, you've been in communism forever. Yep, they are only supposed to have, where was that at? There were 3 states, here we go, Vermont, Kentucky, and Tennessee. They all became states before Ohio, before the Northwest Ordinance was carved into pieces. Each of those had unlike Ohio, each of these states had it officially admitted to the Union by acts of Congress. In the case of Ohio, Congress enacted no explicit legislation admitting the state to the Union. It was never admitted. So I'm going to do a whole video on this separate. I can't do it right now. But I mainly wanted to point out the church stuff and what's going on. And you've never had the entire gospel given to you. And if your mom and dad are on your baptismal certificate, you could be a bastard. Every church is going to have, every congregation or denomination, I guess we should say, is going to have some sort of canon law if they're doing baptisms. They got to be following something. So yours doesn't need to read like the Roman Rite canon, but you may want to go read about the baptism and see if it reads something like what we just found today, because it's going to make you a bastard in a society that, bastards have no civil personality. And the one that can fix it is the church. Don't need to go to anybody else. Go to the church. Get them to change your status. It'll automatically reflect over into the state. That's how it reads, at least. So, okay. Y'all have a great night. See ya. Bear with me. Remember how to turn this off.